All right, welcome back to the Out of Bounds podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. Josh Durso, Nate Sharman. We are inside the FingerLakes1.com studio. We finally got some interesting LIV Golf news related to world golf ranking points. I felt like a fool a couple weeks ago going on a rant in one of our more recent episodes about golf, world golf ranking points, and just how much work LIV was going to have to do if they wanted to get them. And it seems like they tried to do the equivalent of like skipping the line at the amusement park.
Yeah, they certainly tried. And isn't it crazy that we're opening another pod talking about the LIV Tour?
It's not
happening. Necessarily a bad thing because it's by far the hottest topic in golf, right? That's kind of encapsulated golf all summer.
Far and away.
But if you haven't heard, LIV Golf has now joined is a relative term, but taken over more so the MENA Golf Tour. What's the MENA Golf Tour, you may ask? As 99.9% of the population has asked that question. It's the Middle East, North of Africa Golf Tour.
Just a tour that quite literally nobody knew about before today.
Yeah, not too many people knew about it, but basically, for a long story short, it's essentially a feeder tour for the DP World Tour,
right?
Kind of thing. So a couple days ago, Jenna Sims, Brooks Koepka's significant other, broke the news. Paul has it up there on the screen now. And she was able to take a picture of the whole group, and on the picture there it says, "Congratulations to these guys for gaining world golf ranking points this week." So we have Jenna Sims breaking the news, which is hilarious in its own right for many reasons. But I mean, it was looking like Greg Norman was looking like they're going to get points this week. Long story short of that is they're not, which we'll go into.
Yeah.
But they're on their pathway to getting OWGR points.
Are they, though? So before we get into, you have a pretty good breakdown of this whole situation in terms of explaining kind of what the nuts and bolts are. But thinking back to my rant from about a month ago now, it all hinged on the LIV Golf Association needing to conform to the rules, not just like, okay, we're going to change the rules and then we'll be able to start getting points next week, but needing to do it for a full calendar year before they would be considered.
Right.
And obviously, OWGR came back and said, well, wait a second.
Right.
Not that fast. So where is that part of it sitting at right now?
Yeah, so they did the whole news on, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday, or Tuesday into Wednesday anyway. And then Greg Norman comes out and says, see, we're gaining points this week. And the panel at OWGR comes out with a statement. I think it was this morning they come out with this, and they say, your plan essentially isn't a terrible plan. It could work, but we can't give you points this week. It's something we have to review and we have to go through. So no points will be awarded this week at LIV Bangkok. Also, I believe they're playing an event in a couple more weeks, and they're hoping to get points in that event. They said no to that event too. So it looks like they won't get points this year, but possibly next year, because it isn't a bad plan in essence, because this MENA Tour does already have ranking points available.
And it's interesting that you fall into that category on this one, right? I'm a little bit surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it was the only option. I mean, as you described a couple episodes ago, they just don't have the parameters in their tour to gain points themselves, so they kind of have to go this way. And as we've talked about, they have unlimited funds, unlimited money. This isn't a terrible route for them, in my opinion. It's just a little too quick. So, wild thought just off the top of my brain here. If LIV Golf has unlimited resources and they want to be the bigger purse or the bigger organization and they want to do the right thing, why don't they develop their own world golf ranking system that includes all of the golfers in the world? I just don't. The majors wouldn't. I think the reason they want the points is so guys can get in the majors. Guys like Cam Smith will be able to play in a few majors, but those guys like Patrick Reed, who's really worried about it, he'll be able to play in the Masters. But if he slips out of that top 50, I believe is the number, he won't be able to play in those other three majors. So I think that's what they're really worried about. But that is a good point there you have with if maybe they could just create their own. And that does have some barriers to it.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that's kind of where, and I think of whether you want to call them the LIV bots or whether you want to just call the LIV Golf proponents, supporters on social media, they get really tied up in this idea that LIV is trying to be this like fair, equal arbiter of golf and to make the game better. They're looking out for themselves. They're looking out for their own interests, just like everyone else in this scenario is actually looking out for their own interests.
Right.
So, if they really were just thinking about, let's create the most fair and equitable system for all professional golfers across the entire U.S., you have unlimited resources, come up with a system that can actually be inclusive to all people on tour. And hey, why not even include the mini tour guys?
Right.
Let's have a ranking of like literally the 300,000 best golfers on planet Earth. Maybe you and I can even get in there.
Yeah, really will. And not the way I played last night. I don't think I'm getting on any ranking list. But
same.
Going into that too is, I think, this is purely me speculating, but I would have to guess that back a couple months ago when Greg Norman was having meetings with these guys, with Patrick Reed, with these guys, he's in essence promising them OWGR points, because I bet you that was every one of their critiques of it. Well, if I don't gain OWGR points, I'm not going to play in the majors, and that's a worrisome to a lot of these bigger guys that have been playing in majors. Guys like Bryson, guys like Patrick Reed, that maybe haven't won in a few years, but can still want to get that and cement a little bit of their legacy back. So I'm guessing Greg Norman kind of said, we're going to get those. We're going to get those world ranking points. And then when they tried to and they filed for it and they said no, Greg Norman and the rest of the LIV Association were just kind of like, well, we need to do something. And I think this is kind of the avenue they're going to.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting to me because I just wonder, was the mentality from Norman and LIV that they were going to basically bully OWGR into allowing their events to get points, or did they just think that everyone on the opposite side of the debate there would be like, oh yeah, this is just a great idea, let's just give them points, even though these are truly, no matter how you feel about LIV and what it's doing for golf and whether it's entertaining or not, has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it literally just is the furthest thing from PGA Tour, DP World Tour style competitive golf. It's literally an exhibition. There's no other way to frame it.
And we've seen this all along. Greg Norman's just kind of flying by night in this, He's kind of just saying things and not necessarily knowing if he's going to back that up in the intermediate. Similar with this OWGR situation. He's like, okay, we're either going to get it right the way we want it to, or we're going to go buy the MENA Tour. I bet you that was part of the plans, months ago. If the first plan doesn't go in, we're going to just buy a different tour that has ranking points already. So he's just kind of flying and promising things. If I had to imagine, then this is kind of how he's going to get things done.
Yeah, and going back to your point about, this was probably part of the equation or the calculus for the guys, the Brysons, the Brooks, the guys that have won majors but haven't won majors very recently, or just have kind of been in the middle of the road. Part of me wonders how much they really care about majors or care about that component of it. Maybe it's a take it or leave it situation. Like, great if they use a DJ as an example. Sure, he wants to play in majors if he can, but at his point in his career, having taken the payday that he took to go play LIV, do you think he's really going to lose sleep over whether he gets to play in majors or not? And same goes for Brooks, who had a super cavalier attitude toward most events in general on tour. He kind of broke the mold on that side. Right. And Brooks or Bryson appears to be more of he's kind of the entertainer of this generation's crop of really good golfers. So I just wonder, what do they really care as much as I think the rest of golf does, or the rest of golf thinks they care about majors?
I think they do. Like you said, maybe DJ doesn't. At this point in his career, he's
the older guys. I don't think
to the
you
top
can't
of the mountain,
it,
right? But guys like I said, Patrick Reed, Brooks, Bryson, I still think there is that desire to win majors.
It's interesting. It's a
and there's no other way to get there without these points to be in the field. Those guys that I mentioned, especially Bryson and Patrick, they love being the villain. So they know if they can go to one of those other majors, maybe not the Masters as much, they're gonna get booed, and they may love that. People are gonna boo them like crazy, especially if it's like in a place like New York or something like that. Fans aren't gonna take lightly that they dropped ship and went to LIV. Right. So when they come back into that soil, into that environment, the other guys around him, the Justin Thomases, the Xanders, those guys, they aren't going to, Max Homa, they aren't going to love him either. They're not going to welcome him back with open arms, but they're allowed to be there. So they'll be there and they'll play that villain card. And that's kind of frankly where they like being too. You know, they kind of like flying like that. So I think they definitely want to play in the majors, some of those guys.
Yeah, and it also begs the question on what do you think about this? So if LIV is successful in playing the MENA card, we'll call it that, and their events do start getting World Golf.
It's called MENA Golf now.
They do start getting World Golf ranking points. Does all of the rest of it just kind of disappear? All the rest of the debate, is it gone at that point? Like there is no they're a type of tour event, and at that point, would it be smarter for all parties involved, PGA Tour included, to try and harness that for commercial good or gain through a Ryder Cup style event or something like that, where you have LIV guys playing against tour guys?
Yeah, that's a great point. That's something I hadn't thought about before. You can kind of, I don't know if accept defeat or accept that you're never gonna kind of win against these guys. So why not lean into it? You're completely right.
Well, at that point you kind of turn it into from a moral and fundamental fight. You turn it into like a commercial fight.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, we're just going to lean into this. It's going to be entertaining and whatever.
Right.
I think there could be some legs there, but I don't know if the tour, given where they've gone with this whole thing and how far they've carried it out, you've got legal action between both sides. Yep. I don't know if LIV would be interested. I don't know if PGA Tour would be interested, but it would certainly be interesting. Take the 6 or 8 best golfers from the PGA Tour and the 6 to 8 best from LIV, match them up. That would be something to watch.
That would be cool. Did you have a chance to see, that's been floating around Twitter, what the MENA Golf schedule will look like now that a LIV Tour event's in there?
Oh, with the purses?
Hysterical. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the ultimate comedy.
It's literally like the MENA event, like 120 people, and it's $75K purse. And then the next event, LIV Golf Bangkok, 48 players, $20 million.
Okay, so
it's hilarious.
So to make this a little more believable, couldn't LIV throw a few more bucks at the MENA Golf events?
I know.
Just to sell it, because isn't that you want to talk about not passing the sniff test? Literally anybody who's looking at that saying, oh, these two parties want to work together, they're going to look at the schedule, they're going to see the purses, and that's going to be the first thing that stands out. They're going to be like, wait, what? Right. What are you even doing here? Throw a few $1 million at these 14, money doesn't matter to you, LIV.
Right.
So throw some millions at these other events so they at least on paper, at first glance, look similar.
Right. So I'm sure there'll be some sort of obligation where these LIV guys have to play in these MENA events. So you'll see the updated purses on those, I would think.
Yeah.
But so I was looking into it a little bit and just seeing some people joke around on Twitter. The other events, so they're, like I said, $75,000 purses, and they're $50 to get in, which is funny too.
Yeah.
So someone was saying so Cam Smith goes to play in his first MENA event. Are they going to make him shell out $50 out of his wallet, or are they going to put him? Are they just going to let him play?
I hope he's got to write a check right.
You think
there.
He's got to get another sponsor? Just like $50. It's like you're going to play your Muni. You're going to play a skins game. You got to shell out $50 cash to play in this MENA event. It's hilarious. I love all the discourse on Twitter. It's so funny.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting part there is just looking at the medium-term implication of that, because I don't know what the qualification process is for players to get into the MENA Tour, but does that mean where you could have PGA Tour players crossing over, or DP World Tour players, if it's a feeder system for that, saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go qualify for a MENA Tour event now,"
yeah,
just to mess things up?
Yeah, I mean, can the best MENA players that are they there? Can they get into a LIV event?
No, because LIV events are still exhibitions.
But shouldn't there be a pathway for the rest of your guys on the tour to get on the LIV tour?
That's one of the
reasons.
That make sense? So that was one of the reasons why, and I don't even think I mentioned it on that podcast when we talked about it, but that is literally one of the reasons why LIV cannot qualify for World Golf ranking points right now, is because there is no qualification process. A Monday qualifier. Qualifier is the exam. There is no Monday qualifier for LIV. So no, the MENA guys cannot. They're just kind of they're placeholders. And they aren't even getting a raise for it.
Oh, God. Man. That's something else.
Yeah.
You going to watch the LIV Tour event this week in Bangkok? or the MENA Tour event this week?
MENA Tour event this weekend. I think I'll be 50-50 on it. I'm trying to think of what I'm going to be doing this weekend.
You might be sleeping because it's in Bangkok.
Yeah, there's
11 Eastern start.
Time zone difference is a struggle for televised golf.
My main thing is this is the first event that's internationally played.
Yep.
I'd love to get Paul's input on this too. What do you guys? We've had this debate about viewership numbers, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Well, I want to say what more or less than what they were in the States.
Oh, less. Way less. It's going to be nighttime here.
But they might have the internet. They're going to have the international crowd though.
Paul's going to be asleep.
No, yeah, it's definitely less. Like F1 this weekend, for example, is in Japan. I'm not staying up until 2 a.m. for that, and I love motorsports, so no, it's definitely gonna be less.
You have to be a special kind of dedicated golf fan in the United States if you are going to stay up to watch that tournament live instead of just catching the leaderboard the next morning when you wake up.
But is there a lot of people you think that live internationally that weren't watching the events in the States because of the time difference? And do you think those people can somewhat compensate for the people in America that aren't able to watch because of the time difference? I'm sure the number's not as big, but I
don't think so.
Takes I would say a good chunk would kind of fall into either category.
I don't think, and I could be wrong about this, I'm firing from the hip, but I don't think golf as a watched sport on television is as popular anywhere else in the world as it is in the United States. I'm just a guess.
Yeah,
could be wrong. Maybe in Asia, but...
Well, actually, that was what I was going to bring up is, I don't know what the laws are, for example, but if your only streaming property is YouTube, which is owned by Google, which is outlawed in certain countries in that time zone.
That's tough.
I'd argue that Asia's pretty popular for golf, especially with what Hideki's done the last few years.
Yeah, I would agree. It'll be interesting. So if we're going to pick a number, like
what do you think? Last time?
What do you think the daily number is? Well, so like the most recent
100, was it?
The most recent Sundays, the most recent finishing days, I think we're in like the 700,000 view range on YouTube. After the fact, that's obviously given
24 hours after that.
Yeah, giving it a day to kind of the numbers to aggregate a bit there. Yeah. I would say it's got to be at least a third of that. At least, my guess, maybe like 250 or 300,000.
I think it gets closer to that 500 number.
Third round. We're talking final round.
Yep. 24 hours after it airs, or the last pod's made.
So, yeah, I would say, so you're going to say 500.
Yeah.
I'll say sub 300. Paul?
I mean, it's tough because if something crazy happens, I mean, people just skip ahead and get to that final
Dustin
spot.
Johnson's team is probably just going to win again.
Right.
They win every week.
Like Dustin Johnson making an 80-footer? That's not crazy enough for Eagle?
I like Josh's number where he's at.
Yeah.
I'll go lower, though.
Put you in a tough spot.
Well, no, it's just that it's a tough time zone for especially the East Coast.
Yeah, I mean, there's I'll
go lower. Part of me feels like it's going to go even lower. I'm thinking maybe 150.
Oh, man.
Oof.
That's not great. That's not great for them.
Definitely
I just chuckle. So we have PGA Tour golf this weekend that people will be able to watch like normal human beings during the day while they're awake. What are we thinking about the Shriners coming up? Obviously, we had the Sanderson Farm Tour this past week. Good event, not one of your headliner events by any means, but a good event. Mackenzie Hughes got the win.
Yeah, relatively fun event, especially and there's a playoff.
Yep.
He beat Sepp Straka in the final, on the second playoff hole. I guess my main question coming out of there, well, it's cool for Mackenzie Hughes. He hasn't won in 6 years to get a second win.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty cool story in itself. But should Mackenzie Hughes have been on the international team? And I know this is something we can argue either way, and I don't think there's a right answer per se, but it's something that you can look at too, and it's pretty cool for Mackenzie Hughes to go out and win the week after the President's Cup and say, well, maybe you should have took me.
If you haven't won in 6 years, I feel like that answers the question.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no matter how good you've been playing up to that point, there was probably just as much reason for you not to be picked as there was for you to be picked.
Right.
And if that's the math, then it's kind of a toss-up, in which case I say, Play better.
Yeah, still kudos to him, though, going out a week
Great
after
win.
the tournament over.
Good to get that win, and who knows what that could mean for him. Seb Straka is one of those guys that had a quality win or kind of in that like early to middle part of the year last year, and
it's a long way.
Propelled him into that spot where he was all of a sudden this name that you were hearing a little more often. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is Mackenzie's chance to break the ice again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we got the Shriners Hospital for Children Open this week. TPC Summerlin in Vegas.
Out in Vegas.
So let's do some picks. Why not? We haven't done that in a couple episodes.
Yeah, we haven't. I haven't picked a wrong golfer in about a month and a half. I'm gonna say Max Homa's in the field, so how can you not pick him?
Right. Agreed.
So like
not my pick, but I love the idea.
I mean, that's my pick. I think right now, as far as American golfers are concerned, he is the hottest golfer I know. Tom Kim's playing, Sungjae Im is playing, so there's other options as well on the American and international side. This is a better field. Cam Davis, there's a guy everybody would like to see get a win.
Yep,
he's hung around a lot, but yeah, I think my gut says Max Homa. I don't know how long he can keep his hot streak going, or maybe if the President's Cup was sort of the end of his hot streak, but we'll see this week.
Okay, I'll take Tom Kim then. You take a look at the President's Cup. We did go 2-3 in that loss to the Americans, but he created so much positive energy and positive buzz throughout the tournament, and that was so much fun to watch. And for a guy that has won on tour, is a mainstay on tour now, and a guy like you mentioned in the last episode that the PGA Tour needs to intend on keeping.
Oh yeah,
I think
can't lose him.
Would be an awesome story too for him to see him win, and I think it's very likely that we see Tom Kim come out with a victory.
Here's a question, because we as modern golf fans, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of prisoner of the moment discussion. Tom Kim gets a win either this week or sometime in the next couple months. Does he vault into, because his win came late in the season, relatively speaking, does he vault into that discussion of like one of maybe the 10 best golfers playing right now, despite the fact that he is so green still in terms of experience on tour?
Paul, I see you have OWGR up there. What's Tom Kim? Are you still on that list?
Yeah, I can get back to it in just a second.
Okay. Well, I was interested in that, but I think definitely if he wants to really get another win pretty recently, or pretty shortly now, I think he could vault into that in that area, kind of like how Max Homa did it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's almost like World Golf Ranking kind of goes to the side. I don't know that that's necessarily the best barometer for judging who the best players are.
Right.
Like that, because there tends to be some lag, just in terms of when that actually, if you told me he was going to be ranked in like the top 5 or 10 by next June or July, I'd believe it.
Oh, for sure.
100% believe it. He could literally go win the Masters and nobody would say, "Oh, wow, that's a surprise."
Right.
No, he's got the game.
Yeah. I mean, and he's a lot of fun too. He was really being energetic with the crowd and kind of pumping him up too. So I thought that was really fun for the international team. Looks like a guy that's going to have some flair in that President's Cup.
Yeah.
For the next however many years that he's there, and kind of being that spark. And I think it's really good for the national team to see Tom Kim kind of, I don't want to say rise out of nowhere, because we didn't really see him much in the first half of the tour season last year, and he kind of jumped out and was really prevalent in that second half, including the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm searching something wrong, but Tom Kim does not currently have a rank.
Oh, he must be under his actual name. So
Ju Young Kim.
Yep.
So let's shift gears here, though. We need to get into our amateur golf topic for the day.
I like it.
Fall golf.
Yeah, we're here in the Northeast. It's a beautiful time to play. Everybody,
and you and I know for a fact, are going to have vastly different opinions on this, because I know you're a big fan of fall golf. You get the leaves changing, usually it dries up a little bit, you get some more moderate temperatures, that kind of thing. But I don't like it. Not here for it.
No.
I know everybody, I know a lot of, especially up here in the Northeast, a lot of folks love it, but it's so short.
That is very short.
so short. And, you know, I think about the weather we've had here for the last, I don't know, the last 2.5, 3 weeks. It's for every good day we have like 3 to 5 days of bad weather. So unless you're only golfing once a week and you can, you know, turn your schedule on a dime, playing golf in the fall, sometimes a little inconsistent.
It's very unpredictable, yes. But some of those days, you know, you get like even if it's in the 60s and you get the sun out, it's beautiful to be out there. And one of the reasons I like it the most is it's very, the term I'm looking for, but there's not a lot of like not a lot of, I can't think of the word right now, but you're not really worried about how you play as much. You know, you can kind of play you can play a little bit more free. You know, you're not grinding for a score per se because you're playing in October and you know, the ball doesn't travel as far. Yeah. Sometimes you're playing on aerated greens, which is a big kind of hamper to things. So you can just kind of go out there, and whether you're stressed at work or at home or anywhere, and you can kind of just go out there and enjoy it. Maybe take a walk, especially on some of those nice days. Like you said, it's a little drier out, and walking can be a good time to do in the fall. And it's just kind of more stress relieving because the leaves, like you said, the leaves are changing, and it's just pretty out.
Yeah, and I think the other, if there is a bigger benefit to it, it's that golf courses tend to really clear out after Labor Day.
Oh yeah,
less
put
busy.
The clubs away.
You're not competing with leagues if you're walking out onto public golf courses. You're not competing with that sort of thing. Not obviously just not as much play. So easier to get out, more relaxing, a little less of a burden to try and organize.
Discounted rates too.
Discounted rates, gotta love that. There are benefits to fall golf, but unfortunately, it's like the people in general. I'm not the biggest supporter of spring and fall because in upstate New York, especially in the last 10 years, spring and fall are two very short seasons.
Yeah, fall's a lot better than spring up here, in my opinion. You get a ton of rain in the spring, not as much in the fall. It can and it will possibly at some points, but it can't be too bad. But after you saying that, let's go play some fall golf tomorrow, Wayne Hills.
Yeah, let's
How's
do
that sound?
That does sound good. Now, here's an interesting question on that side. Are there golf courses that you aim for or like to play or only play in the fall versus the places where you're playing throughout the summer? Like a golf course, in my mind, a golf course that fits that category is Reservoir Creek down in Naples here in upstate New York. I never play it during the summer. I never play it during the spring because it's typically too wet. But in the fall, down in the hills around Naples, it's gorgeous. It
sure
is. It fits what fall golf is supposed to be in upstate New York, or just in the Northeast in general. But I don't really have any urge to play there any other time of year.
Right.
Even though it's a course, it's a track that I like and a layout that I like.
Let's go play there. That's a really good point. It's like you took the words out of my mouth.
Situated in the hills. It's gorgeous. Yeah. Okay, so another amateur golf topic that we needed to get into, that we wanted to get into, handicaps, or counting, really like religiously counting your score to figure out where you lay in the golf landscape. At what point do you think the average golfer starts to care about their handicap?
I think when you can consistently keep it under 100, you're consistently playing golf the right way, and you're getting it under 100. You know, you can have a score at, you know, in that 95 range. Yep. When you can start posting those scores, and it almost becomes like a game. You know, I want to get my handicap down. You know,
right?
It's like fun to kind of go out there and say, oh, I want to put a good round together, and whether that's handicap or even just using a different, you know, free app on most phones, you can kind of get your differential too.
Oh yeah,
and you can kind of play that game of, well, you can see your progress. Like, I think I'm getting better, but I'm not sure. But by posting those scores, you can kind of put them all in one place and be able to kind of see if you're marking fairways and greens too. You can kind of see where you are and where you can cut down some strokes. So I think once you get under 100 is kind of my threshold for posting.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think in certain golf circles, there is this assumption that people who shoot higher numbers than that care or are interested in what their handicap is. But I think at the end of the day, those folks are just out there having fun. They're just out there playing with their buddies. And it also, I think there's a component of it that maybe isn't so much score driven and frequency that they're playing. So maybe you start out and you're playing once a month with a few buddies, meeting up on a Saturday, drinking some beer and playing golf. And then all of a sudden you shift to maybe playing once a week, or maybe you're even playing more than once a week. I think that would be when, even if you're not necessarily hitting that number that you're talking about, I think you may start to care what your handicap is.
Right.
But I think the 100 number is a good one, but I also think that, it might, there are probably some 100 to 110 golfers who care what their handicap is.
Consistently see, like you said,
is
a huge portion.
It's kind of like once you can actually finish a round of golf fully without having to take any kind of odd provisions so that you're able to get through the round, pulling it out of the weeds and not taking a penalty stroke or whatever the case may be, pulling it out of hazards, not counting hazard strokes, that sort of thing. Once you get to a point where you're more consistently just finishing holes and finishing your rounds of golf, maybe that's when you start to care about that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And
I think it's way too much work also, by the way.
Right. It is, and
posting your scores is so much work.
It is and it isn't, though, because I think if you can kind of come to a spot where maybe you're not necessarily, tracking fairways or tracking greens, which I think can be a good idea, though, because you kind of can, by doing that, you can kind of really, at the end of the day, reflect on your round. You can take a look at your round and say, oh, I really messed up doing 60-yard shots, but I was good from 150. Those are pretty solid shots, and kind of managing your expectations that way and being able to kind of build off that. So next time you go to the range, next time you go to the putting green, you can kind of think about those situations that you were in, and by kind of tracking your round, you kind of remember better where those situations were, and you can kind of work on yourself as a better golfer instead of just blindly hitting balls to the range. You can kind of think about that situation you were in and the shot you needed to hit versus a shot you did hit.
Yeah, I think that's the maturation of the golfer. And really, that is, especially over the last 2 years, I think we've seen a lot more casual golfers make that turn.
Definitely.
Turn that corner, because it's just,
but at the end of the day, you gotta have fun. That's really that's the main parameter. You can go through it and you can track your putts and your fairways hit and your greens hit in regulation. But at the end of the day, make sure there's a smile on your face coming off that 18th green, because that's why we're all here at the end of the day. Whether you shoot par, whether you shoot 120, that's why we're all here, because we like to play.
And none of us are getting paid.
Nope.
None of us are getting paid to play golf.
No calls from the MENA Tour yet.
Yet. Maybe next week. Hey, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Drop us a line or question at outofbounds@fingerlakes1.com. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Links are in the show notes. For Nate Sharman, I'm Josh Durso. And remember, whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.